The bell rang with a sound like thunder that echoed through the entire arena, and in that instant, everything changed. Vorthan moved faster than most aliens could even see, his massive body launching forward like a black missile of death and destruction. His claws extended to their full deadly length as he charged across the arena floor toward the small human who stood waiting in the center. The crowd held its breath, expecting to see Tae-ho torn apart in the first second of the fight. Many aliens closed their eyes or turned away, not wanting to witness what they thought would be a horrible massacre. The betting computers automatically prepared to pay out winnings to those who had bet on the fight, lasting less than 10 seconds. But something impossible happened. Vorthan's claws swept through the air exactly where Tae-ho had been standing just a moment before. But the human was no longer there. The massive predator's attack hit nothing but empty air, and the sound of his claws cutting through space made a whistling noise that filled the arena. Tae-ho had moved. He had not run away in panic like everyone expected. Instead, he had stepped to the side with a movement so smooth and quick that it looked almost like magic. His feet barely seemed to touch the ground as he flowed out of the way of Vorthan's deadly attack. The crowd gasped in shock and surprise. Their mouths fell open and their eyes went wide as they tried to understand what they had just seen. How could such a small creature move so fast? How could he react so quickly to an attack from the galaxy's greatest predator? Vorthan spun around with fury burning in his yellow eyes. His pride was hurt badly because he had never missed a target before in all his years of fighting. His muscles tensed and his spikes stood up even straighter as anger filled his massive body like poison. "You dare to make me look foolish, little worm!" he roared at Tae-ho. His voice was so loud that dust fell from the ceiling high above. Them and some of the weaker aliens in the crowd covered their ears in pain. But Tae-ho did not seem frightened by the terrible roar. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone watching. He rolled his shoulders slowly, like a worker getting ready. For a long day of hard labor, he stretched his neck from side to side and flexed his fingers as if he was preparing to lift heavy construction materials. This calm behavior made Vorthan even more angry than before. His eyes blazed brighter and steam seemed to rise from his black skin as rage consumed him completely. He could not understand how this tiny creature could be so relaxed when facing certain death. "I will crush you into dust," Vorthan screamed as he leaped high into the air. His massive body rose up toward the ceiling of the arena and then came crashing down toward where Tae-ho stood. The impact would have been enough to flatten a small building and turn any normal creature into nothing more than a stain on the floor. But once again, Tae-ho was not where Vorthan expected him to be. The human had moved again with that same impossible smoothness. Stepping aside at exactly the right moment to avoid the crushing attack, Vorthan hit the metal floor with a sound like an explosion that shook the entire space station. The impact was so powerful that it left a huge dent in the arena floor, which was supposed to be made from the strongest metal in the galaxy. Cracks spread out from where Vorthan had landed like a spider web of broken metal. Pieces of the ceiling high above shook loose and fell down like deadly rain. In the stands, aliens started whispering to each other in excitement and confusion. They had never seen anything like this before. Usually, Vorthan's opponents were either dead or broken into pieces by now. But this human looked like he was just getting started. Lee Min-ho, a human trader who had traveled to the arena to watch the fight, smiled quietly to himself. He was one of the few beings in the entire station who was not surprised by what was happening. He knew things about human bodies and minds that most aliens had never learned. He had bet a large amount of money on Tae-ho to win, and now he was beginning to think that bet might actually pay. Off Park, so young a human scientist who was sitting in the expensive VIP section took careful notes on her electronic device. She wanted to record everything that happened because she knew other humans across the galaxy would want to study this fight. She understood that this moment might change how aliens saw humanity forever. Down in the arena, Tai-Ho continued to move around Vorthan like water flowing around a rock. Every time the massive predator attacked the human was somewhere else, entirely. It was as if Tai-Ho could see the future and knew exactly where each attack would come before it happened. Vorthan tried again and again to catch his small opponent. He used his claws, his teeth, his massive tail, and all of his incredible strength. But every single attack missed by inches, or sometimes by miles. Sweat began to drip from his spiky skin, and his breathing became heavier as frustration and exhaustion started to take their toll. The alien crowd began to change their opinion about what they were watching. They stopped laughing and started paying very close attention. Something was clearly different about this fight, and they could sense that they were witnessing something historic and important. Some of the younger aliens in the crowd started cheering for the human. They had never seen anyone make Vorthan look foolish before, and they found it exciting and entertaining. The older aliens who remembered when Vorthan first became champion looked worried and confused. Vorthan attacked with his claws again, slashing through the air in deadly patterns that should have cut Tai-Ho into pieces, but the human ducked under the attack and rolled away before popping back up to his feet several meters away. He still looked completely calm and relaxed, as if avoiding deadly attacks was something he did every day. The great predator stopped his attacks and stood still for a moment, breathing hard and staring at Tai-Ho with those burning yellow eyes. For the first time in his life, Vorthan was beginning to feel something he had never experienced before in all his years of fighting. He was beginning to feel doubt. "What are you?" he growled at the human, his voice now showing confusion instead of just anger. "How do you move like that? What kind of creature are you?" Tai-Ho smiled for the first time since entering the arena. It was a small, quiet smile that somehow made him look more dangerous than if he had been snarling and showing his teeth like a wild animal. "I am just a human," he said in a voice so calm it was almost cheerful. "Just a simple construction worker from Earth, and now I think it is my turn to attack." The words sent a chill through every alien watching, because they realized that up until this moment, the human had not even tried to fight back. He had only been avoiding Vorthan's attacks while studying his opponent and waiting for the right moment. Now that moment had come, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans could really do when they decided to stop running and start fighting. The massive space station called Victory Ring floated in the empty darkness between distant stars like a giant metal moon. The station was so big that entire cities could fit inside it, with room to spare. Millions of lights covered its surface, making it shine like a jewel against the black space around it. Inside the station, thousands and thousands of alien creatures filled the seats of the great arena. The noise was incredible, as beings from every corner of the galaxy talked and shouted, in hundreds of different languages. Some aliens looked like giant insects with too many arms and legs. Others resembled walking trees with bark for skin and leaves for hair. There were creatures made of pure energy that glowed bright blue, and others that looked like living rocks with eyes. The arena itself was a perfect circle carved from the strongest metal in the galaxy. The floor was polished so smooth it looked like a mirror, and the walls rose up high into the darkness above bright lights, hung from the ceiling, casting everything in harsh white light that made shadows look sharp and dangerous. In the center of this amazing arena stood a creature that made even the bravest aliens feel fear deep in their hearts. His name was Vorthan, and he was known throughout the galaxy as the strongest predator that had ever lived. He stood nearly 4 meters tall, which was taller than 2 humans standing on top of each other. His body was covered in skin as black as the space between stars, and sharp spikes grew from his arms and back like deadly thorns. Vorthan's head was the stuff of nightmares, with a long snout filled with teeth longer than kitchen knives. Each tooth was sharp enough to cut through solid steel like it was soft butter. His eyes glowed bright yellow like twin suns, and when he looked at something, those eyes seemed to burn right through it. His massive hands ended in claws that could slice a spaceship in half with one swipe. For 5 long years, Vorthon had fought. In this arena, and for 5 long years, no creature in the entire galaxy had been able to defeat him. He had fought against the strongest warriors from 1,000 different worlds. Warriors who could move faster than lightning. Warriors who could lift mountains. Warriors who could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. All of them had fallen before Vorthon's terrible strength. The crowd went completely wild as Vorthon raised his massive arms above his head in victory, even though the fight had not even started yet. His roar was so loud and so deep that it made the entire space station shake like an earthquake. The sound echoed off the metal walls and came back even louder, making some of the smaller aliens cover their ears. In pain, alien reporters from news stations across the galaxy spoke quickly and excitedly into their recording devices, telling millions of viewers on distant planets about what they thought would be another easy victory for the champion. Some reporters had been covering Vorthon's fights for years, and they all said the same thing, that no creature in existence could possibly defeat him. The betting booths around the arena were doing incredible business as aliens placed their money on how long the fight would last. Most bets were for less than 30 seconds because that was usually how long it took for Vorthon to destroy his opponents. The longest bet anyone was willing to make was for 2 minutes, and even that seemed wildly optimistic then. Something happened that nobody expected. A small door on the far side of the arena opened with a soft hiss. The door was so small that most aliens had never even noticed it before, because it was usually used by maintenance workers and cleaning robots. But today, something different came through that door. A human walked out. The entire arena, which had been filled with the deafening noise of excited aliens, suddenly became as quiet as a tomb. Thousands of creatures who had been cheering and shouting just seconds before now sat in complete silence, staring at the small figure that had entered their arena. The human looked incredibly tiny compared to the massive space around him. He was even smaller compared to Vorthon, who towered over him like a mountain towers over a pebble. The human's name was Kim Tae-ho, and he was just a simple construction worker from the planet Earth. He had short black hair that was neatly combed, and he wore the same plain work clothes that he put on every morning to go to his job building houses and office buildings. Tae-ho did not look like a fighter at all. His arms were strong from years of construction work, but they seemed like twigs compared to Vorthon's massive limbs. His hands were rough and calloused from handling tools and materials, but they looked tiny next to the predator's deadly claws. He stood barely 2 meters tall, which meant Vorthon was twice his height. The silence in the arena lasted for nearly a full minute as aliens tried to understand what they were seeing. Many had never seen a human before because Earth was considered a minor planet with a weak species that was not worth much attention. The few aliens who had met humans before knew them as soft creatures who were easily frightened and not very strong. Some aliens in the crowd began to whisper to each other, asking if this was some kind of joke or mistake. Others started to laugh, thinking this must be some kind of entertainment before the real fight began. The laughter grew louder and louder until it filled the arena like thunder. But there were a few aliens who did not laugh. A small group of traders and diplomats who had spent time near human space stations sat quietly watching. They had heard stories about humans, stories that most other aliens thought were just myths and legends. These stories told of humans who never gave up, no matter how hopeless things became. Stories of humans who became more dangerous when they were scared, instead of weaker. Tae-ho walked slowly to the center of the arena, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. His face showed no fear, no anger, no excitement. He looked as calm as if he was walking to work on a normal Tuesday morning. This calmness was almost more frightening to some aliens than if he had been screaming and waving weapons around. He looked up at Vorthon, who stared down at him with those burning yellow eyes. The size difference was so extreme that it looked like a child standing next to a giant monster. But Tae-ho did not step backward or show any sign that he was impressed by the predators. Vorthan tilted his massive head to one side, studying this strange, small creature that dared to enter his arena. He had fought against thousands of different species over the years, but never a human. He had heard they were weak and cowardly creatures who avoided fighting whenever possible, yet here one stood before him apparently ready to fight. The arena master, a floating blob-like creature with multiple eyes and a voice that could be heard throughout the station, finally broke the silence. His voice boomed through the speakers as he announced the fight, ladies and gentlemen of the galaxy. He called out, "Today, we have something very special. A human has come to challenge our champion Vorthan, the strongest predator in known space." The crowd erupted in laughter again, but this time it was mixed with confused chatter and nervous whispers. Many aliens were pulling out their communication devices to record what they thought would be the fastest defeat in arena history. Even Vorthan seemed amused by the situation. He opened his mouth wide, showing all of his terrible teeth in what might have been a smile or might have been a threat. The sound that came from his throat was somewhere between a chuckle and a growl, as the final preparations were made for the fight to begin. Nobody in that arena had any idea that they were about to witness something that would change how every alien in the galaxy thought about humans forever. This moment would become legend, a story told on 1,000,000 worlds about the day everything changed. The bell that would start the fight was about to ring, and when it did, the galaxy would learn that the small, soft creatures from Earth were not what they seemed to be at all. What happened next shocked every single alien watching in the arena. Tai-Ho did not pull out any special weapons or use any mysterious alien technology. Instead, he did something that seemed completely crazy to everyone watching. He ran straight toward Vorthan at full speed, like he was planning to crash into the massive predator with his bare hands. But the way Tai-Ho ran was different from anything the aliens had ever seen before. Most creatures in the galaxy were built for short bursts of incredible speed or amazing strength that lasted only a few moments. Vorthan himself was designed by nature to be a perfect killing machine who could destroy his prey in seconds. Humans were built completely differently as Tai-Ho ran across the arena floor. His breathing stayed steady and controlled. His heart pumped blood through his body in a rhythm that seemed to make him stronger with each step. His muscles worked together like parts of a perfect machine that had been running for millions of years. The aliens watching did not understand what they were seeing, because most species in the galaxy had evolved to be either predators or prey. Predators like Vorthan were fast and deadly, but they got tired quickly after using all their energy. Prey animals were good at running away, but they were not built for fighting. Humans were something else entirely. They were persistence hunters. Long ago on the planet Earth, when humans were still primitive creatures living in caves and hunting with simple tools, they had developed a very different way of catching their food. Instead of being faster or stronger than their prey, humans learned to chase animals for hours and hours and hours until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. A human could chase a deer or an antelope across miles and miles of rough ground under the hot sun, never stopping, never giving up until the animal being chased simply could not run anymore. Then the human would walk up to the exhausted creature and kill it with simple weapons. This ability had been built into human bodies over millions of years of evolution. Their hearts could pump blood efficiently for hours. Their lungs could process oxygen better than almost any other creature their legs could carry them across enormous distances without stopping. Their minds could focus on a single target with laser-like intensity. As Tai-Ho ran toward Vorthan, all of these ancient abilities activated in his body. His breathing became deeper but never panicked. His eyes focused completely on his target, like the eyes of ancient hunters tracking prey across endless plains. His body began producing chemicals that made him stronger, faster, and more alert. Vorthan swung his massive claws in a deadly arc that should have cut the charging human in half, But Tae-ho was no longer running in a straight line. He had changed direction at the last second, moving like water around the attack, and then continuing forward without even slowing down. The human reached Vorthan and did something that made the crowd gasp in amazement. He ducked under the predator's guard and landed his first punch right in the center of Vorthan's stomach. The hit was not incredibly powerful, but it was placed with perfect accuracy, right in a spot where it would hurt the most. The sound of the punch hitting Vorthan's body echoed through the arena like a drumbeat. Vorthan stumbled backward more from surprise than from pain, but for the first time in 5 years, the great predator had been hurt by an opponent. The alien crowd could not believe what they were seeing. The small, soft human had actually managed to hurt the strongest creature in the galaxy. Some aliens rubbed their eyes, thinking they must be seeing things that were not real. Others checked their recording devices to make sure they were actually capturing this impossible moment. In the VIP section, where the most important aliens in the galaxy sat and watched Ambassador Kral Thon from the powerful hegemon, Empire leaned forward in his chair, his 4 eyes all focused on the human with new interest and growing concern. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. "That creature should have been torn apart in the first few seconds of the fight. How is it still alive? How did it manage to hurt Vorthan Captain?" Veltar of the Elite, Starguard spoke urgently into his communication device. "Command," he said, his voice tight with worry. "We need to study these humans much more carefully than we have been this. One is showing combat abilities that we never knew existed. We may have made a serious mistake in underestimating their species down in the arena." Tae-ho continued his attack, but he was not fighting like any creature the aliens had ever seen before. Instead of trying to overpower Vorthan with brute strength, he used speed and intelligence and perfect timing. He landed another punch, then another and another. Each individual hit was relatively small compared to Vorthan's massive size, but they were adding up like drops of water, eventually filling a bucket. More importantly, each attack came at exactly the moment when Vorthan was most vulnerable, when the great predator was off balance or recovering from his own failed attacks. Humans had developed another ability over millions of years that most aliens did not understand. They were incredibly good at reading body language and predicting what other creatures were going to do before they did it. Tae-ho could see the tiny movements in Vorthan's muscles that showed when an attack was coming. He could predict where the claws would strike and how to avoid them. This ability had helped ancient humans survive on a dangerous planet where everything seemed designed to kill them. They learned, too, read the signs that warned of approaching storms, dangerous animals, and other threats. By watching carefully and thinking quickly, they could stay alive when stronger creatures could not. But the biggest surprise was still coming. As the fight continued, something amazing began happening to Tae-ho's body. His human physiology started producing adrenaline, a powerful chemical that most alien species did not have. When other creatures faced mortal danger, they usually became weaker and more frightened. As their bodies prepared to run away, humans were the opposite. When faced with deadly danger, human bodies became stronger, faster, and more focused. Adrenaline flooded through Tae-ho's system, making his heart pump harder, his muscles work better, and his mind become crystal clear. Every sense became sharper. Every movement became more precise. Cho Hyun-woo, another human who was watching from the crowd, recorded everything on his portable device. He knew this moment would become legendary among humans across the galaxy. Finally, aliens would see what his species was really capable of when pushed to their limits. Vorthan tried one more desperate attack, putting all his remaining strength into a massive swipe with both claws at once. It was an attack that could have destroyed a small building, but Tae-ho was ready for it. He grabbed one of Vorthan's massive arms and used the predator's own momentum against him, throwing the giant creature across the arena using leverage and timing instead of brute strength. The sound of Vorthan crashing into the arena wall was like thunder. The impact left cracks in the metal that spread out like lightning bolts. For the first time in 5 years, the galaxy's greatest predator was lying on the ground, struggling to get back up. The arena fell completely silent as thousands of aliens stared in shock at the impossible scene before them. The small human stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard, but still standing strong, while the mighty Vorthon lay defeated against the wall. Everything they thought they knew about the universe had just changed forever. Vorthon lay crumpled against the arena wall, his massive body shaking as he tried to understand what had just happened to him. His black skin was covered in sweat that dripped onto the metal floor like dark rain. His fierce yellow eyes that had struck terror into the hearts of countless enemies now showed something that had never been there before. In all his years as champion, fear, real honest fear of another living creature. The great predator tried to push himself up from the ground, but his arms, which had always been strong enough to crush steel beams, now trembled under his own weight. His legs, that had carried him to victory in hundreds of battles, refused to support him properly. Every muscle in his body ached with exhaustion he had never felt before. The entire arena remained in absolute silence. Thousands of alien creatures from every corner of the galaxy sat frozen in their seats, staring at the impossible scene playing out before them. Some aliens rubbed their eyes, over and over again, thinking they must be having hallucinations. Others pinched themselves, trying to wake up from what had to be a very strange dream. Many aliens reached for their communication devices to call friends and family on distant worlds, but then stopped, because they realized no one would believe what they were trying to describe. How could they explain that the strongest predator in known space had been defeated by a small, soft creature from an insignificant planet? Tae-ho stood in the center of the arena, looking almost exactly the same as when he had first walked through that small door. His work clothes were dirty and wrinkled, but not torn. His breathing was slightly faster than normal, but nowhere near the exhausted, gasping that Vorthon was doing. He looked like he could keep fighting for several more hours if necessary. This fact terrified the watching aliens more than anything else they had seen during the fight. Most creatures would be completely exhausted after such an intense battle, but this human seemed to have energy reserves that went far deeper than anyone had imagined possible. Slowly, carefully, Tae-ho walked across the arena toward where Vorthon lay struggling. The aliens in the crowd tensed, expecting to see the human deliver a killing blow, or at least humiliate his defeated opponent the way most arena winners did. But what happened next shocked them even more than the fight itself. Tae-ho stopped in front of Vorthon and extended his hand downward in a gesture of help. The human was offering to help his enemy stand up. This simple action broke something fundamental in the minds of many aliens watching. They understood violence and competition and the dominance of the strong over the weak. These were concepts that existed in every species across the galaxy, but they could not understand this human idea of showing respect and kindness to a defeated enemy. How Vorthon gasped from his position on the ground, his voice barely more than a whisper. "How did you defeat me? I am supposed to be the strongest predator in the entire galaxy. I have killed thousands of enemies. I have never been beaten before." Tae-ho reached down and gently helped the massive creature to his feet, supporting Vorthon's weight until the predator could stand on his own. The contrast between the tiny human and the enormous alien made the gesture even more remarkable. "You are very strong," Tae-ho said in a calm, respectful voice. "But being strong is not the only thing that matters in a fight. My people learned long ago that the creature who lasts the longest often wins even against enemies who seem much more powerful. We do not win battles by being the biggest or having the sharpest teeth. We win by never giving up, no matter how hopeless things seem." The alien crowd began to murmur and whisper as translators converted Tae-ho's words into hundreds of different languages. Across the galaxy, beings who had thought they understood humans suddenly realized they knew almost nothing about these strange creatures from Earth in the VIP section. The most powerful leaders in known space spoke urgently into their communication devices, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Dr. Kang. Su Jin, a human biologist who had been invited to watch the fight, smiled with quiet pride. She had spent years trying to explain human capabilities to alien scientists, but they had always dismissed her research as exaggerated nonsense. Now they would have to listen. The arena master, still floating in shock above the fighting floor, finally managed to find his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen of the galaxy," he announced, his words shaking with disbelief, "we have witnessed something that will be remembered. For generations, the human has defeated Vorthon. We have a new champion, but instead of celebrating like a typical winner, Taiho did something that confused the aliens even more. He bowed deeply to Vorthon, showing the same respect he might give to an honored teacher. "Thank you for an excellent fight," he said to the defeated predator. "You have taught me that I still have much to learn about combat. I hope that someday we might train together and both become better fighters." This display of humility and respect completely shattered the remaining assumptions that aliens had about human nature. They were familiar with winners who gloated and losers who begged for mercy, but they had never seen a victor who thanked his opponent and asked to learn from him. Vorthon stared at Taiho for a long moment, his yellow eyes showing confusion, wonder, and something that might have been the beginning of friendship. Then slowly the great predator lowered his own head in a bow. "I was wrong about your entire species," he said in a voice filled with new understanding. "You are not weak prey animals as we believed. You are hunters like us, but different. Perhaps much more dangerous than we ever imagined because you combine strength with wisdom." The crowd finally erupted, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of the usual cheers for violence and dominance, there was something different in the air. Some aliens applauded with genuine respect. Others sat in thoughtful silence trying to process what they had learned. Many simply stared in amazement at the two fighters who had somehow turned a brutal combat into a lesson about honor and mutual respect. News reporters from across the galaxy spoke rapidly into their devices, trying to find words to describe events that seemed to defy description. The story would spread faster than light-speed travel, carrying the news to every civilized world in known space. On the planet Zephyr Prime, the ruling council of the Trade Federation called an emergency meeting to discuss what this meant for their relationship with Earth. On the war world of Krag, major military leaders gathered to reassess their defense strategies against possible human expansion. Even in the furthest reaches of space, where some species had never heard of humans before today, everyone would soon know the name of Earth. As Taiho prepared to leave the arena, he had no idea that his simple decision to step into a fighting ring would change the balance of power throughout the entire galaxy. He just wanted to go home to his small apartment in Seoul and tell his wife, so raw, about the strange and interesting day he had experienced. But the universe had other plans. The age of underestimating humanity was over, and every alien civilization would now have to decide how they wanted to deal with a species that was clearly much more dangerous than anyone had ever suspected. The small, soft creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable solar system had just announced to the galaxy that they were not prey, they were predators, and they had the patience to hunt for as long as it took to win. The news of the impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than the fastest starships could travel. Within hours of the fight ending, every major news network on every civilized world was broadcasting recordings of the battle on planets where aliens had never even heard of humans before. Today, the name Earth was suddenly on everyone's lips. On the water world of Aquatica Prime, where the dolphin-like cetaceans ruled vast underwater cities, the entire population gathered around viewing. screens in their coral amphitheaters. They watched in stunned silence as the small human defeated the legendary Vorthon, then spoke among themselves in their complex whistling language, trying to understand what this meant for the future. The crystalline beings of Silicon Valley, a planet made entirely of living glass, projected the fight onto their transparent bodies so that the images played across their surface like moving tattoos. They had always considered themselves the most logical and rational species in the galaxy, but logic could not explain what they had just witnessed. In the great hive cities of the insect world, buzz, 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 millions of worker drones stopped their tasks to watch the recordings. Their compound eyes processed every frame of the battle while their collective mind tried to calculate the implications of humanity's unexpected strength. But nowhere was the reaction more intense than in the halls of power, where the real decisions about galactic politics were made. In the massive council chamber of the United Species Alliance representatives from over 300 different civilizations gathered for an emergency session that had been called within 6 hours of the fight ending. The chamber was a marvel of engineering that could accommodate every type of life form, from gas clouds to rock creatures to beings made of pure energy. General Mordak of the fierce Saber clan stood at the main podium, his 6 arms gesturing angrily as he spoke. His species had been considered the greatest warriors in the galaxy until today, and his pride was deeply wounded. One human. He roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. One untrained construction worker has defeated our greatest champion. How many more surprises? Are these creatures hiding from us? We have been treating them as a minor species, barely worth our attention. What if we have made a terrible mistake? Ambassador Zeth Ara, from the ancient Crystal Empire, spoke next, her voice ringing like beautiful music, but carrying undertones of deep concern. We have had diplomatic contact with humans for over 50 years, she said, but we never took them seriously. They seemed so weak, so easily frightened. We offered them minor trade agreements and protection services because we thought they needed our help to survive in a dangerous galaxy. She paused and looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces before continuing. But if one ordinary human can do this, what might their trained soldiers be capable of? What about their scientists, their leaders, their strategists? We may have been looking at this completely backwards. Perhaps they do not need our protection. Perhaps we need theirs. On the floor of the chamber, representatives began shouting and arguing in dozens of different languages. The translator systems worked overtime trying to keep up with the chaos. Some species demanded immediate military action against Earth before humans could become a threat. Others called for new trade agreements and diplomatic missions. High Admiral Thex Moore of the Galactic Defense Force stood up slowly, his ancient exoskeleton creaking with age. He had been a military leader for over 200 years and had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. His voice carried the weight of experience when he spoke. I have studied warfare across this galaxy for my entire life, he said quietly, and everyone fell silent to listen. When a species shows capabilities we did not know existed, we must assume they have other capabilities we have not discovered yet. This human did not use any weapons or technology. He defeated Vorthon with nothing but his natural abilities and intelligence. The old admiral looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from every major power. What else can humans do that we do not know about? He asked. How do they think? How do they plan? How do they fight when they are truly threatened? We need answers to these questions before we make any decisions about our future relationship with their species. Meanwhile, on Earth itself, the reaction was very different than the fear and confusion spreading through alien worlds. In the city of Seoul, where Kim Tae-ho lived, thousands of people filled the streets celebrating, like their favorite sports team had just won the Galactic Championship. Children ran through the crowds wearing homemade human hero costumes, while adults shared drinks and food with strangers. President Han Ji-woo of the Earth Federation found herself busier than she had ever been in her entire political career. Her communication systems were flooded with calls from alien governments across the galaxy. Some wanted to establish new trade relationships. Others demanded explanations for humanity's hidden abilities. A few even offered military alliances against common enemies. "We are not trying to threaten anyone," President Han told the emergency session of the Earth Council. "We just want to be treated as equals in the galactic community. We want to explore, learn, and help make the universe a better place for everyone. But we will not be pushed around or treated like children anymore." The most interesting reactions came from ordinary aliens who worked alongside humans in the mixed colonies and trading stations scattered throughout space. On New Harmony Station, where humans and aliens had lived together for decades, the alien residents gathered in the community center to discuss what they had learned. Grex, a blue-skinned engineer who had worked with human construction crews for 5 years, stood up to address the crowd. "I have seen humans lift heavy equipment that should have required machines." He said, "I have seen them work for 12 hours straight without rest when our project deadlines were tight. I thought they were just very dedicated workers, but now I wonder if there was more to it." An 8-legged creature named Skitter, who ran a restaurant popular with both humans and aliens, added her own observations. Human customers often order food that would be too spicy or too hot or too cold for other species to eat. She said, "They seem to enjoy challenges that other beings would avoid. I always thought it was just personal preference, but maybe their bodies are more adaptable." Then we realized back on the Victory Ring Station, which was quickly being renamed Harmony Station to reflect its new role as a meeting place between species. Vorthon had become something of a celebrity himself. Aliens traveled from across the galaxy just to hear him tell the story of fighting a human. "Humans do not fight to prove how strong they are," Vorthon would tell his audiences. "They fight to protect what they love, and that makes them far more dangerous than any predator." When you fight for survival, you might give up when things get hopeless, but when you fight for love, you never stop trying. Some alien military leaders dismissed these reactions as panic and overreaction. They argued that one human winning one fight did not prove anything significant about the species as a whole. But other, more thoughtful leaders began quietly ordering comprehensive studies of human history, human biology, and human psychology. What they discovered in those studies would shock them even more than Taeho's victory in the arena. Humans had survived ice ages that killed most life on their planet. They had built civilizations that lasted thousands of years. They had fought wars that covered entire continents, yet somehow always managed to rebuild and grow stronger. Most disturbing of all, humans had never fought a war against another species. Every conflict in their history had been against other humans, which meant no alien civilization had ever seen what humans were capable of when facing a truly foreign enemy. As reports and analysis poured in from research teams across the galaxy, one fact became clear to every thinking being: the small blue planet called Earth was home to a species that had been greatly underestimated. The question now was what everyone planned to do about it. Some wanted to build walls and weapons to keep humans contained. Others wanted to build bridges and partnerships to ensure humans remained friendly. The smart ones realized that the choice might not be up to them anymore. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the universe would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the fight that changed everything, and the galaxy looked completely different than it had before. The Victory Ring Station had been transformed into something entirely new called Harmony Station, where humans and aliens could meet safely to learn about each other, trade goods, and share knowledge. Kim Tae-ho stood in what used to be the fighting arena, but was now a beautiful garden filled with plants from hundreds of different worlds. The metal floor had been covered with soil. and the harsh lights had been replaced with gentle illumination that mimicked natural sunlight. Children from dozens of different species played together among the flowers while their parents watched and talked. Tae-ho still found it hard to believe that he was now the director of this amazing place. He missed his simple life as a construction worker, but he understood that his victory had created responsibilities he could not ignore. Every day, aliens came to meet him and ask questions about human culture and capabilities. The changes went far beyond one space station, though human colonies that had been ignored by alien governments for decades suddenly found themselves with full diplomatic recognition and trading rights. The remote mining world of Kepler-7, where human settlers had struggled to survive on their own, was now visited by alien supply ships every week. Admiral Park Dong-hyun of the Earth Defense Force reported to his superiors that attacks on human merchant ships had dropped to almost zero. Alien pirates, who had once seen human vessels as easy targets, now avoided them entirely, unsure of what surprises the crews might have hidden aboard their ships. "Nobody wants to test us," Admiral Park explained to the Earth Defense Council. "They have no idea what we are really capable of, and that uncertainty is better protection than any weapon we could build. They are afraid to find out what other abilities we might be hiding in the great universities of the core world's." Alien students lined up to take classes taught by human professors. Dr. Kim Young-soo, who had been a simple history teacher on Earth, found himself lecturing to audiences of thousands as aliens hungry to understand humanity filled every available seat. The key to understanding humans, Dr. Kim would tell his eager students, is remembering that we evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. Our planet had ice ages that lasted thousands of years, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for decades, diseases that wiped out entire populations. Yet somehow we always survived. He would pause and look out at the sea of alien faces staring back at him. We learned that giving up meant death. So we developed the ability to keep trying even when success seemed impossible. That shaped everything about who we are as a species. We do not quit. We do not surrender. We adapt and overcome. The most surprising change of all came from the hegemon empire, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Emperor Drathnos himself had requested a personal meeting with Earth's leaders. It was the first time in galactic history that the Emperor had asked to meet with representatives from what had been considered a minor species. President Song Mi-kyung of the Earth Federation stood in the Emperor's vast throne room, surrounded by guards and advisors from the most advanced civilizations in known space. The throne room was larger than most cities, with walls that seemed to stretch up forever, and decorations made from rare materials gathered across the galaxy. "We do not want to conquer anyone," President Song said simply as she addressed the most powerful being in the galaxy. "We do not want to rule over other species or take their worlds. We just want to be treated as equals. We want to explore the universe, learn about other cultures, and help make life better for everyone." Her translator converted her words into the Emperor's native language, but the meaning was clear in any tongue. The Emperor himself was a creature of legend, standing 4 meters tall with skin like polished metal and eyes that glowed with inner fire. He had ruled the galaxy's greatest empire for over 300 years. "Your species' interests me greatly," the Emperor said, in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "Most beings who gain power try to use it to dominate others, but you seem genuinely interested in cooperation and mutual benefit. This is either the greatest deception in galactic history or evidence that humans think very differently than other species." President Song met the Emperor's glowing gaze without flinching. "We have fought wars on our own world," she admitted. "But every one of those conflicts taught us that cooperation achieves more than conquest. We learned that the best way to be secure is to help our neighbors be secure." 2. The Emperor studied her for a long moment, then made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. For the first time in the history of the hegemon empire, he offered membership in the Inner Council of Species to a species that had never conquered another world back on Earth in a small apartment in Seoul. Kim Tae-ho sat with his wife Lee, So-ra watching news reports. About all these amazing changes, their simple life had been turned upside down, but they were adapting to their new reality like humans always did. Do you regret fighting in that arena? So-ra asked her husband as they watched footage of human and alien children playing together on Harmony Station. Tae-ho thought carefully before answering. No, he said, finally. I think it was meant to happen. Humans have been underestimated for too long. People thought we were weak because we looked small and soft. But they did not understand that our real strength comes from something they could not see. What do you mean? So-ra asked. Our hearts, Tae-ho replied. Our willingness to help others even when it costs us something. Our refusal to give up even when everything seems hopeless. Our ability to see enemies as potential friends. Those are the things that make us strong on Harmony Station. Children from Earth played games with young aliens, learning each other's languages and customs. Human teachers worked alongside alien professors to develop new ways of sharing knowledge. Vorthan himself had become one of the most popular instructors teaching combat techniques that emphasized honor and respect rather than just victory. The Great Predator had formed an unlikely friendship with Tae-ho and often spoke about how the fight had changed his understanding of strength. True power, Vorthan would tell anyone who would listen, comes not from the ability to destroy your enemies, but from the wisdom to turn enemies into allies. Scientists from both human and alien civilizations worked together on projects that neither could have completed alone. They developed new medical treatments that could help species throughout the galaxy. They created technologies that could clean polluted worlds and restore damaged ecosystems. They built ships that could travel faster and safer than ever before. Most importantly, they were learning to see each other not as aliens, but as neighbors in a vast universe that had room for everyone. The changes were not without problems. Some alien governments still viewed humans with suspicion, and a few extremist groups on both sides argued for isolation rather than cooperation. But these voices grew, weaker each day, as more beings experienced the benefits of working together. Children who grew up on mixed worlds like Harmony Station did not see the differences between species that had seemed so important to their parents. They saw friends, playmates, and fellow students working toward common goals. This gave everyone hope that the future would be better than the past. Years would pass, and historians would mark the day of Tae-ho's victory as the beginning of a new age in galactic civilization. They would call it the Age of Unity, when beings from across the stars learned that their differences